From NJ.com, this is Talk is Cheap, a New York Giants podcast. We're talking Big Blue football all year round.
Welcome on in, Giants fans, to episode 159 of the Talk is Cheap podcast right here on NJ.com. As always, I'm Matt Lombardo, joined by my friend and colleague Ryan Dunleavy. And Ryan, for the first time since late last season, there's a victory to talk about, a historic victory in many ways, as it, of course, began the Danny Dimes era for the New York Football Giants with a thrilling comeback in the fourth quarter in Tampa Bay, where just like in the Super Bowl in 1986, a field goal kick drifted just wide right in the city of Tampa Bay to give the Giants their first win of the season. And for all intents and purposes, one of the more exciting games to talk about from a Giants perspective in some time.
Yeah, the Giants had lost their last 55 games when trailing by 18 points or more at halftime, a stretch that went back to 1970. It was the second largest comeback victory for a quarterback in his first career start since 1970. Jones was the first quarterback ever with at least 300 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns in a single game. First rookie quarterback since 1970. Just totally crazy. I mean, just totally... It was everything the Giants thought it would be. It was probably the most exciting Giants game since 2012, and just because you're going to get yelled at, I'll do it for you, the fans. That Super Bowl was 1990, not 1986.
Gotcha.
Like,
well,
Ryan.
Here we go.
I know you were like 3 years old. So.
I will go one step further here in terms of what Daniel Jones was able to do. It's the first time that a quarterback in a Giants uniform rushed for 2 touchdowns in a game. Eli Manning's career high was 1, I believe. Correct? It's the first time
since Hostetler in 91, who won that Super Bowl.
Yep. So obviously Daniel Jones with a historic performance. And if you want to talk about what it was able to do against pressure, a quarterback rating above 132, completed 70% of his passes against pressure. And then you all saw, and we all were able to see what Daniel Jones was able to do, extending plays, running for first downs, and then, of course, running for touchdowns. We're going to break it all down. Of course, you can follow along on Twitter. Ryan is at RY Dunleavy. I'm at Matt Lombardo NFL. And if you like what you hear, we'd love it if you would subscribe on Apple Podcasts, throw us a like on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Google Play. You can find us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, or Spreaker. And as always, we really do appreciate those 5-star reviews. Let us know what you like and even what you don't like. It helps us grow the show. And we have a comment and a review coming in, Ryan, from Kwame Zilla. He calls it an unbiased point of view. Finally, a Giants podcast that's not on the Giants payroll. Love that these guys don't seem to have a bias and they say it like it is. One of my favorites. Just please give us more episodes.
It's kind of like how I said Pat Shurmur never liked the media narratives. He never agreed with them until this week when they won a game and his quarterback played well. Now I bet you he agrees with a lot of the narratives. It's funny, like the media's wrong when the team's losing, but right when the team's winning.
Yep, and let's just dive into what Daniel Jones was able to do. And in my opinion, Ryan, it all came down to that final drive. I mean, we can talk about all we want, and I'm sure we will, some of the big throws, like turning Evan Ingram into a one-play scoring drive type of player when they needed a big play the most right after halftime. We could talk about the pinpoint accuracy on the throw to Sterling Shepard, but in his first game to orchestrate a fourth-quarter game-winning comeback drive, that showed me something about the kid. And, of course, it's 4th down and 5 on an offense that had struggled so mightily on 3rd down the first 2 weeks of the season. On 4th down, 4th and 5, Jones is in the pocket. It's like the Red Sea parting over the middle of the field, and he runs right through the heart of the Buccaneer defense for that game go-ahead touchdown, which proved to be the game winner. That showed me something about the kid because you don't get much more pressure-packed moments than that, and he went out and he took advantage of it.
Yeah, poise is the word everybody's been throwing around. I think you just used it. That's what the teammates are using. To me, it was accuracy that really impressed me. That ball he threw to Sterling Shepard for a touchdown, you talk about it perfectly. He threw into double coverage, basically, but he did it with confidence in a spot where only it was either Sterling was going to catch it or it was going to be incomplete. There were so many other balls. I think Sterling caught another one on the game-winning touchdown drive where he caught the ball in space and turned around and there was no one near him and he ran. He was accurate. I've been saying this on the podcast for weeks. He was accurate with a catch and run ball. He put the ball where it needed to be for his players to then not only take the catch that they had, but make a guy miss the Evan Ingram catch. That wasn't just Evan Ingram was open.
Yeah.
So you could have thrown that ball a little behind Evan Ingram. It's probably still a 12, 15, 18-yard gain. He gets tackled. 1st and 10, start again. No, he threw it to Ingram in a spot where Ingram could turn upfield. Darius Slayton could throw a nice block, and Everett Ingram's gone 75 yards. I loved his accuracy with the football.
Yeah, I agree. And it wasn't just necessarily throwing him open. It was leading his receivers, as you pointed out, to get yards after the catch. Nowhere did that pay off more than the Evan Ingram ball. And just back to that Sterling Shepard pass just for a second. I in the post-game report card, I had that graded as his best throw, and it probably was when you go back and watch it. That happened right underneath where the press box is. I don't think a lot of people understand how the press box is set up in different stadiums. We were right along that corner of the end zone, and from my vantage point, it looked like he threw it to a spot in the corner where only Sterling could go and get it. It's not like Sterling was there at the top of his route. That was timing, it was anticipation, and it was accuracy. And what made it most impressive to me, Ryan, wasn't just that particular throw, but Sterling Shepard's not a guy he was working with much during training camp or the preseason in practice. He didn't have the time with Russell Shepard or Cody Latimer or Reggie White Jr., who he was throwing to during the summertime. This was Sterling Shepard, who he got first-team practice reps with for all of 4 practices before getting on a plane to Tampa Bay, and he delivered. And
Ingram, too.
And Ingram as well. You're absolutely right about that. So you talk about the timing, you talk about the mobility, and a lot of players have told me that, and Evan Ingram told me about this today, actually, that the biggest difference is he has that mobility to extend plays. So you have that ability at the top of your route to freelance a little bit if you hadn't already broken open where the play is still alive. And that's where I think that it's an element of this offense that they hadn't had in prior years, and I'm kind of excited to see how that continues to develop as the year goes along.
I wrote this as a lead. I'll say it on the podcast. The best way to describe how special Daniel Jones' debut was is that we were in a party atmosphere locker room. I mean, there were F-bombs being dropped, hugs, high fives, and Saquon Barkley was sitting there in crutches. It should have been the proverbial season funeral.
Right.
You and I are, 7 minutes into a podcast, and we haven't mentioned Saquon Barkley's injury. Yeah. That's how special Daniel Jones' debut was, that it actually overshadowed maybe the second big. The Giants might be responsible for the first and second biggest stories in the NFL right now. Daniel Jones being better than most people thought he was, and Saquon Barkley and the devastating. Think how devastating the Giants' season would be if they were 0-3, Eli Manning was quarterback, and Saquon Barkley was injured for 8 weeks. I mean, oh my God, people would be selling tickets for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I said this in a couple radio interviews and a couple TV appearances, and I think I might have even written it, Ryan, that you look at this through the scope of everything that happened on Sunday that you just pointed out with the injury. Daniel Jones was so good and so accurate, and he was so big in the clutch moment that it really turned the entire trajectory of the franchise. The future is brighter than I remember it being for the New York Giants for the last several years, probably dating back to 2016 when they got on the plane to go to Lambeau. But I think the future has never really been brighter in recent memory for this team, but the regular season's in doubt because of Saquon Barkley's injury.
I mean, the regular season I thought was in doubt anyway because the defense stinks.
No doubt about it, but I think that if Barkley were healthy and you had the best running back in the league and arguably a top 5 tight end and you have Sterling Shepard and you have Golden Tate coming back and you have this renewed faith in the offensive line, not to mention in a division where the Redskins are spinning their wheels, the Eagles can't get or stay healthy, and they have the chance, they were 1-2 entering a Thursday night game against the Packers, that you're right there in the mix for maybe fighting for a wild card spot with several winnable games remaining. Now it's just about, can we survive the 4 to 8 weeks without Barkley and still get Daniel Jones to take incremental steps in his development along the way?
I know once they made the switch to Jones, you had him going to the Super Bowl. I know. I read your prediction. I read it. I'm still holding up 4 fingers because I still think they were a 4-win team with or without Barkley. I just don't think they're very good. But at least now there's a reason to watch, right? Like the Browns Browns were a 7-9 team or whatever last year, but Baker was a reason to watch. The Jets were a 4-12 team last year, but Sam Darnold was a reason to watch. On and on and on. You could go. I'm sure the Eagles were an 8-8 season 2 years ago, but Wentz was a reason to watch. Now you have a reason to watch it. The record doesn't really matter. The record is gravy at this point. Now it's all about how good does he play? How consistent is he? I almost want to see him have a bad game this week
to see how he bounces back.
Like, I want to learn everything I can about Danny Dimes.
If it's not this week, the chances for bad games are coming, buddy, because you have the Minnesota Vikings coming to town next week, and then on a short week, hopping on the buses that go up to Foxborough to take on the Patriots. How he bounces back from adversity, you're about to get a pretty decent sample size over the next 3 games.
I want to see him throw an interception so I could see how he bounces back from that. I want to see him throw. I want to see him have like a near perfect game. Like he still had the 2 fumbles in this game. I want to see him play perfectly so I could see how he handles playing perfectly. I want to see everything I can from Danny Dimes. I want to see him put in every situation. I want to see him get crunched on a sack. How he bounces back from that. I want to see everything I can from Danny Dimes.
By the way, you say I had them going to the Super Bowl. I upped the win prediction from 6 to 7 with Danny Dimes.
But 7 gets you a wild card. You get in. You win a couple games.
Well, that's just it. If
you
Barkley
get hot.
healthy,
You're a Super Bowl team.
Yeah. If Barkley were healthy,
here we go.
I think that this team, when you look at the schedule, could win if Jones plays at this level 8 or 9 games.
Oh, no. So now we're from 6 to 7 to 8 to 9. Check back next week, folks, when Matt has them winning the NFC East.
And people called me a hater for the last year and a half. But certainly a lot to be excited about on the offensive end, and a lot of unknowns. It's going to be Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram, and there's probably a good chance you're getting Cody Latimer back. And we haven't really talked about Darius Slayton other than the block he threw on the 75-yard run, catch and run to Evan Ingram. But he had a big passing play of his own. I believe it was a 46-yard bomb down the middle of the field that set up the Sterling Shepard touchdown pass. He's the closest thing other than Ingram that this team has to a field stretcher, and he played like it against the Buccaneers.
Absolutely. I think so. Look, there's a couple reasons the Giants like Sterling Shepard. One is because he is a great blocker, and Darius Slayton has that ability to be a blocker. And if you're going to play with Saquon Barkley, you need to, as a receiver, you need to be a blocker. And Darius Slayton is that. He was that at Auburn. That's what you need to be in the Auburn offense. And then the Giants need a field stretcher, and Tyke Tolbert said last week that if you lined up the whole team on the goal line and had a sprint race, Darius Slayton would win 10 out of 10 times, and that's on a team with Barkley, a team with Ballantyne. I was pretty impressed by that, and he played like it. He caught the ball, which was his when he first got here in rookie minicamp. Darius Slayton got open and dropped the ball. He caught the ball. I think Darius Slayton has a chance, pound for pound, steal for steal. He could end up being the guy who, like, of all, second round, third round pick was Ximenez, fourth round pick was Julian Love, who we haven't even seen yet. Fifth round pick was Connolly, who's starting, so he obviously is a good pick. Slayton could actually end up being the steal of the draft for the Giants.
Yeah, steal of the draft for sure, but then you look at the top of the draft class in general, and this was their coming out party. I mean, you look at everything Jones did. His success has been well documented. Dexter Lawrence gets his first sack. He tells me after the game, and Marcus Lawrence was gloating after the game, that all week in the locker room, Dexter Lawrence was talking about, Marcus Golden rather, said that, all week in the locker room, Dexter Lawrence was calling his shot, that his first sack was going to come against Jameis Winston. You talk about that. You talk about Ryan Connolly being thrust into a starting role when both Tay Davis and Alec Ogletree go down. He gets his first career interception. Yeah. So you look at what the rookie class did.
Baker had a nice, quiet game, which is exactly what he needed.
Well, that's because Jameis Winston was too busy targeting Jackrabbit.
I'm sure if you ask DeAndre Baker, that's fine by him. He had a nice, quiet game that he needed.
Yeah, he certainly did. But my point here is that when you start looking at this draft class in general, you're looking back to last year, and you can look at Barkley, you can look at Will Hernandez to a certain extent, you can look at Lorenzo Carter, and then you look at this year's class with Slayton and Connolly and Lawrence, and depending on what Baker's able to do, these are two pretty solid from a talent standpoint draft classes that Dave Gettleman brought in, and they're really going to serve to be the foundation of this franchise for the next several years. It's only one game, and it's only a one-game sample size, but I really was impressed by what I saw from this rookie class as a whole.
Yeah, let's get to some of the stuff that is concerning. Let's flip this forward to the Redskins.
Oh, you mean the fact that the Giants won that game largely because of a missed field goal by Matt Gay?
What's your concern level for Janoris Jenkins?
Pretty high, actually, because, and I think that part of this is, and James Betcher is going to catch a lot of heat because he continues to match Janoris Jenkins against the opponent's best wide receiver. They did it the first week
but what's the other
against
option?
Amari Cooper. Well, that's what I'm getting to. They don't have the other option. They did it in week 2 against John Brown, and he, was okay in that game. And then, of course, the dam broke on Sunday when he gave up 88 yards and 3 touchdowns plus a 45-yard bomb that set up the potential game-winning field goal that Tampa Bay missed. You don't really have any other options there. The only other option is you shade Antoine Bethea to that side of the field at all times, but then you leave yourself exposed against opposing tight ends. So
and
there really
DeAndre
is no
Baker. You're going to leave DeAndre Baker in one-on-one cover?
Yeah.
DeAndre Baker needs more help than Jackrabbit.
Yeah,
So.
no, I agree. And you look at Janoris Jenkins, he had a coverage grade on Sunday afternoon, according to Pro Football Focus. Obviously one of the worst of his career, but on the season, he's down to just 31 in coverage and 37 overall. And going back to our Pro Football Focus primer, anything above a 65 is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Janoris Jenkins is in the red with a 31 in coverage and 37 overall, and it was something like a 28.7 coverage grade on Sunday, and you can make the argument that that's being kind based on what Mike Evans was able to do. And it doesn't get easier on Sunday, Ryan, because you have a rookie coming in McLaurin for Washington who's averaging over 17 yards per reception and has 3.95 speed in the 40-yard dash.
Yeah. I think, look, the Giants left themselves on this island with the secondary. We knew they were doing it. They didn't sign a veteran. We all thought they should. I had heard Pierre Desir, I think, was the guy I had heard was a target of theirs. And they ended up going with a bunch of kids, Ballantyne, Julian Love,
and Love has
Grant
essentially
Haley.
become a safety.
Yeah, Grant Haley. They went with all these kids in Jackrabbit, and that's putting a lot on Jackrabbit. They cut Tony Lippett, who was a veteran in camp. They went with all these kids in Jackrabbit, and the problem, if you're going to do that, is the kids are going to struggle. You need Jackrabbit to not struggle, and Jackrabbit, pretty much his whole career, has been inconsistent, more good than bad, but he's never been like a game in, game out, lockdown corner. He has always had these kind of like moments of like he'll have a pick six and a two pick game, or he'll make that play like he made at the end of the Bears game in overtime last year, some big play, but then the
interception against Jacksonville in the opener last year. But those are really the two plays that strike out over the last season plus for Janoris Jenkins. It's just been tough sledding, and I think a part of this is the pass rush. But you look at last week, Marcus Golden had 2 sacks. Dexter Lawrence had a sack of Jameis Winston.
10 quarterback hits, I think.
Yeah, so the pressure is starting to come from the Giants' defense. It's just the back end has just been so deficient that it's become target practice back there. And with McLaurin and with Paul Richardson and of course, whether it's Case Keenum or Colt McCoy or whoever, if they have a clean pocket to operate, those guys are more than capable of getting open and inflicting some damage on a secondary.
Yeah. Let's tell the Giants, I was thinking about this the other day, is there a more anonymous fourth-year Giant than Wayne Gallman? Have you ever written a Wayne Gallman story? I don't think I've ever written a Wayne Gallman story. Like, this isn't a guy who was just like picked up off the street, 2 weeks ago. Wayne Gallman's been on. He's a Jerry Reese draft pick. There's only like 4 or 5 of those guys left
out of Clemson.
Yeah, and he is going to have a huge role in this game. So anybody who doesn't know, I'm assuming Wayne Gallman's the Giants' starting running back this week. Like, they're going to face the Redskins. We're talking about Daniel Jones. You wrote a good story a couple weeks ago on how the Bills' whole point of their defense was stop Saquon Barkley and make Eli Manning beat you. Then Bruce Arians said pretty much point blank last week they were going to he didn't hide it. They were going to stop Saquon Barkley and make Daniel Jones beat him. Now the game plan becomes...
Which, by the way, in the entirety of the game, Daniel Jones led the Giants in rushing last week. So mission accomplished on the Bruce Arians front. And again, Barkley got hurt in the first half, so that changes things. But this offense is going to look wildly different on Sunday.
Now, if I'm a defensive coordinator, it's stop Daniel Jones, make Wayne Gallman beat me.
Yeah. I think that's how you have to approach it. And, you look at this offense, I don't know how much you can rely on Wayne Gallman to be the bell cow. It's going to be Evan Ingram targeted 18 times. It's going to be a steady dose of Sterling Shepard. But I think what I'm
You're going to have Daniel Jones throw the ball 50 times?
I don't know what choice you have, right?
I don't know. The way the Giants are built, this is a devastating injury. You can't have it both ways. You can't put all your eggs into the running back basket. Running back matters. It's a crock that it doesn't. You're naive, whatever. And now you lose your running back and tell me that doesn't matter. I
know on Thursday, Pat Shurmur said that they're in no rush to put Saquon Barkley on the IR. That's not going to happen, even though that would guarantee him sitting out for 8 weeks. I think the timetable's probably going to be in that 4 to 5 week range, knowing how aggressively Barkley rehabs. But certainly this is going to be a prolonged stretch without him. I think I'm most interested in going into Sunday, Ryan, what they do behind Wayne Gallman, because I don't know that he's a guy that can withstand an 18 to 22 touch workload on his own. I spoke to a couple sources around the league. Fozzie Whitaker, one of the guys they worked out this week on Tuesday, nothing imminent. They're not bringing him in this week. They have a couple guys on the practice squad like John Hilliman, C.J. Anderson worked out for the Houston Texans, but to me that's the move I would have made on Tuesday, is bring in C.J. Anderson, who is a proven commodity as a veteran. You can hand the ball to him 15, 20 times per game, and when Barkley gets back, you saw what he did with Gurley last year. You can limit Barkley's workload, thus limiting the chance that he aggravates the injury. The Giants didn't go there. We'll see what kind of roster move that they make, but if they just go status quo and promote Hilliman or one of these other practice squad backs, I think you're setting yourself up for failure, quite honestly, on offense, because you're asking, as you said, Daniel Jones to shoulder the majority of the workload on offense, and that's a lot to put on a kid in his second career start.
You mentioned Fozzie Whitaker, and every time I hear that name this week, I keep thinking, is he more of like a 60s television character, or is he more of like the cartoon?
I think of the Muppet.
Yeah, Fozzie the Bear. Fozzie the Bear, the Muppet, right? Like, I keep hearing Fozzie, and I'm a Fozzie Whitaker, and I'm like, that's such a perfect like TV character name. Yeah. That has nothing to do with this game, obviously. You're absolutely right. Like, I think you're looking at maybe 10 Gallman carries, 5 Eli Penny carries, maybe 2 John Hilliman carries. But I think the Giants... the part that worries me, Matt, is Wayne Gallman is not a very good pass catcher. Like, we watch him in practice. The Giants will say he's a good pass catcher. He's that element of the offense is going to have to take a back seat. The dump offs, the wheel routes, all that stuff. He's not going to have Saquon Barkley's impact he's more Saquon Barkley the runner than he is Saquon Barkley the pass catcher, which I think says something. Now, here's what I will say. He might be an upgrade as a pass protector. Saquon Barkley is not a great pass protector. He's okay, he's serviceable, and you don't even really care because he's so good at everything else. But pass protection is the weakest part of Saquon Barkley's game. Might be the strongest part of Wayne Gallman's game. So maybe in that regard, maybe he's a left. The offensive linemen I talked to this week were very high on Wayne Gallman's ability to diagnose blitzes, to make sure he picks up the right guy that an offensive lineman misses, to be that last line of defense for Daniel Jones. So maybe that helps.
Yeah, I think that'll help. And again, it just comes back to it kind of meshes with Daniel Jones' skill set anyway, that when he does face pressure, he's so good against it. And having that extra pass protector back there might give you an extra second or two in the pocket to make something happen downfield. But you're right. I think the carries are going to be more evenly split in a committee approach rather than Barkley being the bell cow. But I think this could be, in a season that's become a breakout season if he can stay healthy for Evan Ingram, this might be his breakout performance, because you're not going to throw it to Gallman in the intermediate and short game. Ingram's the guy I think that benefits the most there.
Yeah, I think Evan Ingram has been there. Sometimes you see it coming, and I think we all saw it coming, that he was going to have a big year, that they needed him in this offense. And what a strange... At this time last year, Ingram was kind of like the forgotten man. He thought he might get traded. There were rumors he might get traded. He was injured all the time, and it almost looked like the Giants favored Red Ellison, like he might be kind of an odd man out. Now, especially right now, today, with Barkley out of the picture, is Ingram the most important player on the Giants? Jones, and then is Ingram the most important player on the Giants?
Yeah, he's probably second to Jones, I would think. Yeah. And if you want to be optimistic that if the Giants can just get through this game and you win, you pull even to 1-1 in the division with a win, right? And next week you get Golden Tate back, so you add another weapon into the mix, and you can move forward with Tate, Shepard, Ingram, and Slayton as your top 3 pass catchers. Again, you're still trying to navigate the loss of Barkley, and I wrote this on Sunday that's going to be the real litmus test for Daniel Jones. It's great to do it in your debut. It's great to do it once, but you're now asking this kid to walk that high wire 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more times without one of the most dynamic and dangerous weapons in the entire NFL behind him. That's a whole other task altogether, but if you start to put some of these pieces in the passing game around him, I think that's how you can be competitive, and I think that's how you can really facilitate his development in the meantime.
Politi wrote something interesting today. If you went back in time to 2012, RG3, since we're talking about the Redskins, had an awesome debut as a rookie. Won Rookie of the Year. What happened to him?
Injuries. The torn ACL, especially in the playoff game, was the end of him.
Yeah, that's why I think enjoy Daniel Jones right now. If you don't expect him to be Eli Manning, play 232 games, I think I saw something like for him to make 232 consecutive starts or whatever Eli did, it would be like 2031.
32 or something like that, yeah.
Don't expect that. Enjoy what you have right now if you're a Giants fan.
Yeah, and look ahead to the future. And I think that on offense...
maybe the near future. Just don't expect another Eli Manning is what I'm...
From a longevity standpoint, I think that Eli is certainly an outlier. And I think that if there's
you're
something...
spoiled, Giants fan. You had Phil Simms for 15 years, Eli for 15 years. Enjoy Daniel Jones right now. Try to get the most out of this next 5, 6, 7 years.
Correct, and that's an eternity in the modern NFL, and that's where
look at Andrew
people
Luck.
have talked about me being so critical of Eli Manning. He was mediocre at best for the last 5 to 6 years of his career. Probably 6 of the last 7 seasons, he was a replacement level quarterback in terms of production. That's an entire career for some quarterbacks, and that's where people say I might be too harsh. But you talk about the best years for quarterbacks. Yeah. Most quarterbacks will last 6 or 7 years in their career.
You know what? Even some first rounders. I mean, even some first rounders. Like I said, look at Andrew Luck. Look at RG3. Yeah, even some guys who have success, you just don't know. So that's why it's a good thing the Giants started the future now. It's a good thing that this season matters for the Giants.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that the one thing, other than the Barkley injury and the unknown about what Daniel Jones has a chance to be over the length of an entire season, that could hold this team back, not only this year, but without wholesale changes next year, is the defense. And you bring in, looking ahead to Sunday, they have the 32nd ranked pass defense in the league. I believe the 31st ranked overall. It's a mess right now. And you can look at every level, whether it's the defensive line, the linebackers, and the secondary. I don't think the Giants have one player who you can say is top 10 or top 15 at his position in the entire league. And when you're that devoid of talent, a lot of people have been screaming for the defensive coordinator's head. Yeah. I have a hard time pinning all of this on James Bettcher because he just doesn't have the horses to put together a competent defense. And you can say that maybe he should give Janoris Jenkins some help, but as you said, that then leaves DeAndre Baker out on an island. People say play Corey Ballantyne. Okay, Corey Ballantyne was a 6th-round pick. Yeah. It might help you in the short term, but eventually his flaws are going to show themselves. They're devoid of talent at the linebacker position outside of maybe Ryan Connolly. Up front, who's generating pressure for you? Marcus Golden? Sure. High energy, high motor, high effort guy. But beyond that, you can't win in the NFL with just one pass rusher. Dexter Lawrence showed he can get some interior penetration the other day. Let's see you do it for 13 more weeks. Yeah. My point here is that as much as everybody wants to scream and yell about James Bettcher, this falls at the feet of Dave Gettleman. For as much talent as they have on offense, they're devoid of that talent right now on defense.
Yes, it is absolutely at the feet of Gettleman. January 2nd, Gettleman sat in front of all of us and said, we don't have enough defensive playmakers. Just like, I told you, offensive line was the key last season. We're going to go out and get defensive playmakers. Well, he made offensive line the priority in 2018, and he failed miserably at it. And he made defensive playmakers the priority in 2019, and I think he failed miserably at that. At least last year, Solder and Omame, he tried to get veteran guys. Solder's been average at best. His contract makes him look worse than he really is, I think.
14 pressures through 3 weeks.
Yeah,
Not good.
No.
3 sacks through 3 weeks. Not great.
And then Omame was an abject disaster. But at least he tried. This year, the Packers have this great defense. Why? Because they signed like 4 free agents. Amos, Brown, Smith. Like, they got free agents that made a difference, like what the Giants did in 16 when they signed Vernon and Jack Rabbit and I
was screaming all offseason about Adrian Amos and Zadarius Smith. You sign those 2 players, all of a sudden this defense looks competent, even without Olivier Vernon.
And so I'll get back to Gettleman in a second. So this brings me to an argument I've been having with another member of the media who will remain nameless, but the Landon Collins move is still a huge mistake in my book. I'm sorry. Even though and I know you don't even necessarily agree with this, but I know you're getting a 3rd round pick for him in the 2020 draft at the end, compensation pick, whatever. You got nothing for him in 2019. You're missing you're on a defense with no playmakers. Like, I'm sorry, I don't understand how Jabril Peppers is not Landon Collins. You replaced him with a player who is not as good as Landon Collins. So I just think that was a huge mistake. I just think that Gettleman just misjudged this defense, and it falls on him.
Yeah, well, I will say this. Jabril Peppers has not lived up to what I thought he would be in replacing Collins. I thought it would be an upgrade in coverage. He hasn't been. Collins is somewhere around the 18th or 19th ranked safety by PFF, which is probably, a little better than what you're getting out of Antoine Bethea and Jabril Peppers. But I'll say this. I think the Redskins are going to regret that contract. The $87 million.
The Giants didn't have to give him that contract.
All they need to do is the franchise tag. You're right. And then you have to think about contingency plans like drafting a safety and having somebody coming up behind him in the next year or two, which would have been fine. The fact that he's not there, I think it is a glaring weakness. The Giants haven't necessarily given up a big play to the tight end yet that, we saw Collins give up from time to time. But I think it's coming unless Peppers really steps up.
So if we made a list, which we won't do, but let's say we made a list of Gettleman's 15 most notable moves, right? Trading for Alec Ogletree, letting Landon Collins go, trading Odell Beckham after signing him. I don't know what else. The Barkley pick over a quarterback, the Daniel Jones pick, the Solder contract. Say 10, 15 moves. I would say that 12 of the 15 are probably not working out right now. Probably don't look very good. He has 3 or 4 times as many bad moves as good moves.
His 2 biggest moves, the drafting of Barkley over a quarterback and Daniel Jones, if he hits, those might be his 2 best moves that he's made as GM, and they're the 2 that he was criticized for the most.
And in your mind, does that wipe everything out? If I gave you a metaphorical scale, and
how good is Jones? Is Jones Mahomes?
No, I mean nobody's Mahomes.
If Jones can be Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger in that level, I think it makes up for it because I think the quarterback is that important.
I can picture in like a cartoon where like the scale has 10 things on one side stacked up and 1 thing on the other. How does it balance out? You think
getting the quarterback right to me means everything, especially pairing it with Barkley.
Even with the other 10 things, or ahead of? He comes out ahead if Jones is right?
I think he comes out slightly ahead because once you have the quarterback, those things start to matter less because you can build around him and not allocate resources to trying to get the quarterback.
I think I agree. I think if he got the quarterback right, then he ends up being looked at as, wow, he's the guy who got
Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
And who knows, depending on how the next couple of years play out, how long he's the GM of the Giants or how competitive they are, how quickly. But that's the other thing. Now you have the quarterback, and it is the hardest thing in sports to find a franchise quarterback. The second hardest thing is winning in the window of him being on his rookie deal.
4 years.
And the Giants now are on the clock, and Steve Politi wrote a great story about this right after, for different reasons, the benching of Eli Manning. They now have 4 years to build a competent, competitive, Super Bowl caliber roster around Daniel Jones because it gets exponentially harder to do that when you pay him a franchise quarterback exact type of contract. And the new CBA is going to change the dynamics of all that and the salary cap and all of those things. But in the current climate, it now becomes imperative, and I think they're much closer on offense because other than maybe a left tackle who they can groom and a right tackle who's young, I think they have the pieces.
Right tackle at that point, right?
Moving to the right side. I think they have most of the pieces on offense. Defense. And again, we've talked about this before.
Look, they only need like 2 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and 3 defensive backs.
If that, because I think that they're so young, and that's part of the reason why this is happening right now. I think it's going to be growing pains throughout the course of this year. And look, you have a first-round pick in Lawrence, a first-round pick in
First-round picks don't always work out.
Baker.
You had a first-round pick in Eli Apple.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I'm just saying they've invested on that side of the ball. They better be right because those are fewer pieces that you have to go and get.
The teams that are right are the good teams. The teams that are wrong are the bad teams.
Like the Steelers and the Patriots and the Rams. Those teams continuously make good moves.
Yes, and the teams that continually screw up their first-round picks are the Browns and the Dolphins and
the Bengals.
Yeah,
Bengals had a lot of first-round talent there as well.
The one thing is Gettleman has been through 2 years much better in the draft than he has been in free agency veteran moves, which is strange because he was a pro personnel guy.
Yeah.
It's strange. His pro personnel moves have been much worse than his college.
And when you zoom out and you look at the picks they've had over the last 2 years, we've touched on some of them over the course of the podcast. If Jones winds up being a franchise quarterback, those guys are the foundation. And you have to need to continue to draft well this year and hit on free agency. So let's zoom in on this game on Sunday, Ryan. Obviously, the Washington Redskins come to town. A lot of familiarity with Landon Collins and with Eric Flowers and with DRC. A lot of familiarity there. Josh Norman obviously tormented Odell Beckham when he was here. That storyline's no longer around, obviously. But this is a pretty big game for them. Again, I don't think either one of us have realistic expectations of them competing for a playoff spot, but it would be pretty monumental from a quote-unquote culture-building standpoint and for Daniel Jones if they won a division game and got to 500 this early in the year.
No, I agree. I think, if you get back to once you're back to 500, it feels like a fresh start. Whether you're 2-2, 4-4, 6-6, 500 for a losing organization always feels like a fresh start. So you're right. If they win, and I think they're actually favored, right?
2-point favorite from what I saw, yeah.
So, obviously if they win, it's a huge game. What factor do you think Landon Collins emotionally has in this game? Like, he's obviously a leader of the Redskins. He's going to be flying high, obviously motivated as all heck. You would think he would motivate the guys around him. Let's win this one for Landon kind of thing. What kind of impact do you think that has on the game? Or am I,
I don't think you're making much of it at all. I think that absolutely happens this week. I mean, I'll just look back to when I first started covering the league, Donovan McNabb's first game back as a Redskin. You just go back and watch the video after the game of him getting the game ball from teammates and them going absolutely nuts for Donovan going back into Philly and winning. I think this week, with all that's been written by our own Daryl Slater, a great story, go read it, on the disdain that Collins, Flowers, and Norman, former Gettleman players with the Giants and Panthers, have for Dave Gettleman. All that was invested, Landon Collins, that he invested in the Giants through his whole career, being a captain, a four-time Pro Bowler, the fact they didn't even offer him a contract, which you and I reported at the Combine, all of that thrown together. There's got to be a lot of talk in that locker room. And if they come in and win, I would not be surprised if the post-game video put up on Redskins.com is the entire defense all about Landon. And, hey, where's Landon? Here's a game ball. And Landon spikes it into the turf. I think that's the type of thing and the type of conversations that are being had down the turnpike this week.
Who starts at quarterback for the Redskins? Can they just start Haskins?
It would be great, wouldn't it?
It would be so fun.
And I think that's the other thing here. Pat Shurmur comes out and he's effusive in his praise of Dwayne Haskins 2 weeks after he says Josh Allen might have been a starter in this league. I think he learned to be a little bit more complimentary of the opposing quarterback, but I also think that he might have liked Haskins a little bit. Obviously, Washington liked Haskins a lot more, and clearly the Giants loved Daniel Jones. He was far more pro-ready, it seems, and I think that if we can't have that drama of Jones versus Haskins, Giants fans have to be pretty excited about how quickly Jones got on the field and how well he's playing.
Can we just stop with who wanted to draft Daniel Jones after the Giants. I can't do 15 years of this. I can't do. He would have been there at 30. He would have been there at 17. Now, all of a sudden, after Daniel Jones is named the starter, all of a sudden there's a line of teams saying, oh, yeah, he wouldn't have been there at 17. Like, no, you didn't want any part of him when the Giants were under fire for it. Now you can't suddenly claim you were going to draft him. I've had enough of that story already. Like, I just can't. I just can't. I don't buy the Giants were going to draft Haskins ever. I never thought he was their type of player.
Clearly, he
definitely
wasn't.
The Redskins.
Clearly,
type.
He wasn't.
Yeah, I definitely thought that he is the Redskins type of player. I look forward to those matchups for the next couple years.
Daniel Snyder loved him, and if there's one thing we know about the NFL when it comes down to coaches and ownership, the owner's going to get his way, regardless of what the head coach wants. If the owner has a preference, especially at the quarterback, he's getting his guy.
I would love to know if John Mara had a preference with Daniel Jones. I would love to know if he'll never admit it. It'll be hard to find for anyone to find out, really, because Mara's so closed off. But I would love to know if he was definitely Gettleman's guy. He was definitely Shermer's guy. I wonder if he was John Mara's guy.
I would think he has to have been to be the pick at number 6 with so much defensive talent on the board. And we've debated this over and over again. I think that the one reason where I think that I was critical of the pick, it wasn't Daniel Jones, the player. And we talked about how, when players show up in rookie minicamp or minicamp, in my opinion, pre-draft talk is over with, right? Yeah. But my concern was, did they maximize the value? And if you could have come away with Josh Allen or Ed Oliver at 6 and traded up to go get Daniel Jones at 7 or 8, that would have been the A-plus move for me.
Yes, but you would have to give up quite a bit to do that. You're looking at probably...
I would have given up 17, 35, and a 2020 first to go get him.
Yeah, I think that would have done it. Yeah, I think that would have.
Because in my opinion, as much as I think Dexter Lawrence has a chance to be a disruptive force, coming away with Josh Allen and Daniel Jones would have set your franchise up unimaginably well.
Here's the thing. Gettleman would have been roasted for doing that, for giving up all that for Jones. I mean, look how he was roasted for Jones without giving that up.
Right.
Would have been roasted for it. But Ernie, of course, he gave up quite a lot for Eli Manning. He gave up a future first-round pick. He gave up the 4th pick, which was Phillip Rivers, a future first, I want to say a second. And no one 15 years later is saying, Ernie, of course, he gave up too much for Eli Manning.
Well, especially when we wind up getting 2 Super Bowls out of the pick.
That's it, right? That's it. Well, give me a pick for this game. Let's wrap this up.
Yeah, I have the Giants winning this game, actually, and I think it could get out of hand. I know that Saquon Barkley not being there is going to play a factor, but I think Jones is that good. I think Washington's that bad. I think the Giants' defense finally has a team where it's not Dak Prescott at quarterback. It's not Josh Allen. It's not Jameis Winston to Mike Evans. I think something in the area of 41-27.
Woo! Blowout for the Giants. Guys, I will tell you, the Jets actually have, the flight crew cheerleaders. The Giants have asked Matt if he would want to be one of their cheerleaders. He has not. He has not replied. He has not replied. I have the Giants losing because I'm just going to keep picking them to lose until the defense shows me something. And the second half, yes, they made adjustments. Yep. Yes, they should have lost the game on a field goal.
I think you're underestimating how bad Washington's roster is.
I think I'm exactly estimating correctly the Giants' defense.
That you might be doing.
Yeah, look. I think Jones was incredible. I'm on board with the excitement. They still should have lost 34-32. So basically, when the defense needed to make a play against Buffalo, they let them go right down the field for a touchdown. When the defense needed to make a play against Tampa Bay, they let them go right down the field for what should have been a field goal. If Bruce Arians didn't take some wacky penalty, if Bruce Arians took a shot to the end zone, they probably would have lost that game too. When the Giants defense needs to make a stop, I don't really have any confidence in them to make a stop. So I picked Washington 28-26.
By the way, I used to ask you for parting shots on the way out. I have the ultimate parting shot right here. People will be talking about this.
I will be silent.
Had they started Daniel Jones week 1, the Giants are entering this week at 2-1 and potentially going to Minnesota at 3-1 through the first 4 games of the season.
Yeah, well, Minnesota's here, but
the game going into the game.
I gotcha. No, I mean, I think it's. obviously on start Jones later than earlier. You were not, but I think you're right. You were right about when they would start him. I think you're right about, I think they would be 3-1. I think they would have beat Buffalo.
And we'll see if they can beat Washington on Sunday at MetLife Stadium. Thank you, as always, as listening. Again, if you loved what you hear, please subscribe in the Apple Podcast Store. Leave us those 5-star reviews and follow us on Twitter. He's at RY Dunleavy. I'm at Mount Lombardo NFL. And, of course, you can follow the show at Talk is Cheap NYG. We'll talk to you next week after the Giants' second NFC East game of the season and the second game of the Danny Dimes era here in New York.